right.
You're a
At the same time.
You're a threat.
I just want everyone to get away from the police. Let them leave. Go, back up.
Let's do it. Well, let's give her a step back. Step back. Go back up. No, you disperse. We're not going to disperse. We're staying in the park. We're staying in the park. We're staying in the park.
How are they going to do that, Randy?
Wait, Randy's asking that we back off a bit, so let's take a step back.
Back up.
Let's take a step back for Randy, okay?
Come after me. I welcome it. I will not back down. I do not fear police. You know, I do not fear Doug Ford.
Back up. Back up. Go back.
No.
Go back into your speeches.
Screw you! You don't be lying to me. You don't be lying to me. You said to back up, so you disperse.
Nobody should fear government in a free country. And I welcome Chief Callahan any day of the week to come and see me. Or Chief Skinner or Chief whoever.
Well, it's easy to despair. So many of the cases that are championed for civil liberties in this country lose. I think of Tamara Leach's conviction just a week ago. I was quite certain that she'd be acquitted. The trial was so abusive of her. The judge during the trial seemed supportive. The law seemed clear, but in the end, she and Chris Barber were both convicted of mischief. I understand she's likely to appeal, so there is a chance it'll be overturned. But how demoralizing did that feel? We shouldn't be too down in the dumps, though, because every time we do win, it's an enormous step forward, not just for the legal battle itself, but for the hope that the courts can undo some of the worst of politicians. I point, for example, to the courts declaring that the invocation of the Emergencies Act during the trucker convoy was illegal and unconstitutional. I think that in most Canadians' mind, that Emergencies Act was like the mountains. It was just there. You couldn't argue about it. But the federal court said, no, that whole thing was illegal. And all the fruits from that tree were poisoned. So, for example, the hundreds of Canadians whose bank accounts were seized, that was all put back into play when it was declared unconstitutional. And the reason I tell you these things is because just now is a win I did not expect, a win I would not have expected. And it's an important win at an important level of court. I'm talking about the recent unanimous decision by the Ontario Court of Appeal to overturn the conviction of former politician Randy Hillier for illegally participating in a political protest during the lockdowns. I thought for sure he lost, and indeed he did lose at the lower level. Randy Hillier is a prickly fella. He's the kind of guy that courts like to smack down. He lost in the first instance. Appeals are always a long shot, but he won. And joining us now to talk about it is the head of the Justice Center for Constitutional Freedoms, our friend John Carpay. John, welcome to the show and congratulations.
Hey, glad to be with you.
John, I couldn't believe it. I mean, Randy Hillier is a handful. I mean, I love the guy, but he's a bit much sometimes. And I think judges, they're just flesh and bone, and sometimes they react to a party like Randy Hillier, and a little bit of politics seeps into their judgment. Randy has always been an outsider. He's always been, I think he would declare himself to be radical. He leans into confrontations, you could say. I'm not saying these things in a negative light. I suppose I have some of those instincts too. Tell us a little bit about the story, because I still can't believe it. I sat down, I started to read the Court of Appeal ruling. I was just amazed. Give us the background, if you would.
Well, your Ontario viewers and listeners will remember in April and May of 2021, the government imposed a total ban on peaceful outdoor protests. Total ban. Yeah. It was illegal. Even two people could not get together for a political protest. The law prohibiting large gatherings for weddings and funerals and religious services was also utterly unscientific and very harsh. You could have no more than 10 people at a wedding or funeral or religious service. But for political protests, it wasn't not even 10 people were allowed, 0 people were allowed. And so, as you mentioned, we lost at trial, but the Court of Appeal unanimously said that the total ban was an unjustified violation of the charter rights and for, in particular, freedom of peaceful assembly, which is section 2C of the charter. And this is actually the first time that an appellate level court has talked about what the freedom means, what it entails, that it's different from freedoms of expression and association and religion and conscience. And so we've got brand new law on this, and it was unanimous. One of the three judges had actually issued a terrible ruling against religious freedom in this other Trinity Bible Chapel decision, and yet she was on this panel. Unanimous panel said that the total ban on peaceful outdoor protests was an unjustified violation of the charter freedom of peaceful assembly.
Yeah, you know what? I read it and I found it bracing. This one line I'm quoting from memory. The judges say, even in an emergency, the charter does not fade from view. I'm paraphrasing, which is encouraging because I think a lot of Canadians said, oh, it's emergency. It's a pandemic. It's the Emergencies Act. The Charter of Rights doesn't apply. That's not true. There's no pandemic exception to the charter. There's no emergencies exception to the charter. It applies in every instance. I bet you most Canadians, including I bet you most judges and lawyers, their first instinct would be, oh no, we have to suspend those constitutional rights because we're in a crisis. We're in a COVID crisis. We're in a tariff crisis. We're in a climate crisis. They'd love to keep us in crises if it could suspend our civil liberties.
Well, there's a huge difference as well. If there was some big temporary thing, maybe some huge forest fire or military uprising, if there was something that was temporary, maybe you can give governments a bit more latitude. The thing about these lockdown measures and vaccine passports is they went on for years. We're talking April and May of 2021. The government's own data has made it abundantly clear to anybody who bothers to look at it that COVID is not an unusually deadly killer. We're all entitled to our own opinions. We're not entitled to our own facts. And the government's data show that COVID was a bad annual flu. And yet we still have all this fear mongering. And here we are in April and May of 2021. So we're 13 months in. And so, as you said, you can't keep on declaring an emergency for things that are in place for literally for years. What I like best about the judgment was just the attitude behind it. You can feel the attitude that these three judges on this panel in this ruling, they care about charter freedoms, and it seems to be a step towards returning to having a high standard whereby it's difficult for governments to violate charter freedoms, as opposed to what we've seen so much of in the last few years is this lowering of the bar where governments can just kind of do whatever they want as long as they're claiming that there's some sort of an emergency out there.
I feel like the passage of time has brought the judiciary, or at least parts of it, back to sobriety. And I think that, let's be honest, some of them panicked as much as anyone else. I mean, I suppose in their defense, they're human. And the average judge is probably 60 or 70 years old as opposed to someone who's young. So they probably would have encountered more people who did actually get really sick or die from the flu. I mean, that's what it's like to be 70. By nature, if you're a judge, you're a law follower. You're an authority believer. There's not a lot of deep skeptics on the bench. By nature, you are a cog in the machine. And I think in those early months and years, there was almost nothing the authorities couldn't do that a judge wouldn't rubber stamp. But for this ruling to come out now in April, 4 years after the events in question, I think the judges have had a chance to maybe, get out of the mania of it. It was a mass mania. What was the phrase? A mass formation.
Mass psychosis.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And there's the mob mentality, and I think that I wouldn't call the judges a mob mentality, but there was a group panic.
There's a group
moral panic. And I think 4 years later, the judges are sort of shaking themselves awake and saying, whoa, did that all just happen? I don't know. I guess I'm trying to explain why this good news comes so late. And I think the lateness is one of the reasons it's good news. What do you think?
Well, I think the passage of time is definitely, we're not getting bombarded every hour of every day by government-funded media proclaiming the false message that COVID is an unusually deadly killer, when in fact it was not. It was certainly real, and it was certainly a threat to a small minority of the population. But the media propaganda was false. And I agree with your analysis. If you're older and you tend to be more law-abiding, the judges would be in the demographic. That said, there's just no excuse for writing a media narrative into your court ruling when it's not supported by the evidence. We would not put up with that for, let's say, a murder trial. Somebody's accused of murder, and the media makes it out like the guy's guilty as sin, and then it comes before the judge. The judge is expected to disregard all of the media coverage and look only at the evidence before the court, and then either convict or acquit the accused person of the crime. And we would be outraged if the judge simply wrote the media narrative into his court ruling. And yet this is what judges did with the COVID. They wrote false media narrative speaking points into their court rulings that were not supported by evidence that was placed before the court. So, we're all human. We all make mistakes, but we don't learn from our mistakes unless they are recognized and owned up to.